better than all of consciousness info. Sa.neter TV 7. You keep it hot 24/7. You got that life for 102. Sa.neter TV 2. Yeah.
You are now inside sa.neter Studios, the house of consciousness production, Black news presentation.
Yeah. Peace and Black Power family. Look like my guest froze up for a minute. You might have to go out and come back in, Dr. Clyde. Yeah, go out, come back in. As y'all can see, the title, The Secret Relationships Between African and the Native Americans. So we want to talk a little bit about that. You know how my channel is. It's fluent. It's fluent. We move around. It don't stay the same. We move around. It's fluent. Like Stephen A. say, it's fluent. The topics are fluent. I had a nice long talk with my brother the other day, Zion Lex. Ready to, to get back in the fold and bring some information and looking for who he can smoke. Yeah. He's looking for somebody he can smoke. Y'all know how we do over here. So without any further ado, I bring to you my guests in the building. Peace and blessings to you, Dr. Clyde Winters. What's happening with you, brother?
What up, though? What up, though? Everything's okay.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm talking about. Bring that energy. Hey, I've been checking out your channel and I see you talk and you break down and you build a lot on the natives' history. And so that's what I called you today for, to have you come on and talk about the secret relationship between the Africans and the Native American. I think we did a little something like that before, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, I want to pass you the mic and talk to us about that, because a lot of our Native brothers and sisters claim that they have no African blood in their bloodstream. They are 100% Native, or Abo, if you will. Talk to us about that, brother.
Well, the basic thing you have to understand is that a lot of people hate to be Black. A lot of people hate to be Black. A lot of people hate the fact that we do have African ancestry. You have to understand that that this is a place where some people still reject their identities. Some people still reject their heritage. The only reason that I know about my Aboriginal heritage is that my mom, back in the day, she talked about the fact that we had Choctaw ancestry, and I thought, I didn't even give a damn. I went to school. I was at DuSable High School back then, and so I went to school in '69. Did a survey. About 63% of the other people said the same thing, but I didn't really think about it. And the reason I didn't think about it is that I was brought up on cowboy movies. And because I was brought up on cowboy movies, I didn't want to be considered an Indian, because the Indians lost. I'd rather be an African king from Malay, or Songhay, or ancient Ghana. And so then, therefore, in the sense is that I didn't really reflect on this history, reflect on this heritage, And in a way, I'm sorry, because I let all the old people die before I really could break down those questions. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The questions I got now, I wish I had the answers. My wife, she used to always say, "Clyde, just going to talk to your cousin Nell, while she's alive." But I didn't do it, because I really didn't see any reason in playing up our Aboriginal heritage, because the fact, in the sense, is that that wasn't important to me. I wanted to be with everybody else. I wanted to be with with the other brothers. I wanted to be talking about Africa. I wanted to talk about our so-called African heritage. The only problem is that we didn't have much heritage, because the fact is that you got to remember, in North America, America began around 1776. By 1818, they had stopped participating in the Atlantic slave trade. since they had stopped participating in the Atlantic slave trade, the only black people that was coming over here, were those who were coming down to places like Louisiana and stuff like that, where they had French slavery. That's why when you see a foundational Black American talking about his ancestors come from Nigeria, that's bullshit. We didn't come, we don't have we don't have that Hausa heritage or that Igbo heritage or that Ibio heritage, because the fact is that they started, people went down the coast. And as they went down the coast, what happened in a sense is that they began to take slaves from different places. And most of the slaves that came from Nigeria, like the Yoruba, the Hausa, and Oyo, Igbo, most of those people, in a sense, they didn't come over here because the fact, in the sense, that by the time those places opened up and were selling slaves, foundational Black Americans were already well established in the United States.
Mm-hmm. The reason I call it the secret relationship between Africans and the Native Americans, because the question I have for you is, a few people don't really understand when they brag about just being Native American, they also bragging that, yeah, we had Africans enslaved too. Talk to us about the natives who also had Africans in slavery. And what tribe was that was doing that?
Okay, what happened in this is that many basically it was the Cherokee and the Cree. The Cherokee and the Cree tribes, what they did in a sense is that they began to have a lot of mulatto children. And their mulatto children, began in a sense to adopt the ways of their white fathers. And since they had white fathers and their white fathers were enslaving African people, then many of the half-breed children, in a sense, from Indian and white relationships, they started enslaving people too. You got to remember that I know it's I got a person worked with me and they're working on their dissertation, their dissertation for PhD, and they're trying to really examine the history of the mulatto. And see, the history of the mulatto in America is quite interesting, because the original mulatto was the mixture of red Indians and white people. See, because this is the original mulatto. Later, in a sense, they began to include the mixture of Africans and Indians, and they began to call them mulattoes. But originally, the term mulatto applied to red Indians or Black Indians and their white partners. You see, and it was their offspring that began to enslave, maybe some of the Africans or other Black Indians. You see, we're very tribal. Because we're very tribal, we were tribal here too. And so then therefore it's just like if you went to Chicago in the 60s. If you went to Chicago, let's say that you grew up on Evans Street in Chicago. Okay, if you grew up on Evans Street in Chicago, then the majority of people on Evans Street in Chicago belonged to what was called the disciple gang. You see, whereas if you were born on Drexel, 49th and Drexel, you would have belonged to what was called the Blackstone gang. And so then you could not go into those neighborhoods because you might get shot and killed, And so then this is
were the natives buying slaves straight off the boat, just like the Europeans?
No. They didn't, because you got to remember the American slave trade was mainly getting Black people who were already here.
Right.
So very few. I think, what is it? They estimate maybe 200,000. Less than 200,000 people they believe came over here as were enslaved people that were off the boat. The vast majority were Black Indians. See, what they would do is that they would they would go. They need some slaves. Let's say they need some people to work. So they would go and attack an African village. They didn't speak English. They spoke their own language. You put them on a boat. Then you would take them to the Caribbean, ride the boat to the Caribbean, stay there for a couple of days, and come back. and say, "Where'd you get those? Where you get those Negroes from?" They say, "Oh, we got them from Jamaica. We got them from Barbados." No, these were black people who were belonged to Aboriginal tribes, but they would just say that they had bought them in the Caribbean.
Were we enslaved to indigenous Americans way before the transatlantic slave trade?
No. The Aboriginal Indians, they didn't really enslave people because it wasn't in their interest to slave people. Europeans enslaved people because they were lazy. American Indians, in a sense, they didn't enslave people. It was mainly, in a sense, American Indians who were descendants, who were half-breed. They had white parents. And because these Red Indians had white parents and they became mulatto, then therefore, in a sense, they were the ones who would try to, in a sense, enslave other people, especially black people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because this whole idea, people don't even understand. Over here, we talk about a lot about colored people. But see, colored people was not the term for the so-called Negro. The so-called Negro was called a Negro. The black Indians were called colored people, you see. But they did not accept it. They didn't accept the relationship. But the craziest thing, what I find really crazy, is that when Columbus and other Portuguese and Spanish explorers came over here, they brought with them people who could speak Arabic and Hebrew as their translators. What does this tell you? I'm not saying that the people in North America were Hebrews or Muslims, but it seems as though somebody in the tribe could speak, in a sense, Arabic or Hebrew because they were trading with these people who were speaking in Arabic and Hebrew, And then we know that, in a sense, that when they recorded some of the Indian languages, especially the Indians in North Carolina and Virginia, the Okanochee Indians, we see that when we look at some of the lexical items or the words that they used in their language, these words were Mandingo words that are spoken in the Maninka language, you see. Whereas these Africans call themselves Maninka, over here they call themselves Manokan. And then the white man, in a sense, you had to really go deep into the records where you find that the people didn't really call themselves Manokan. They called themselves Maninka, just like the people in Africa. But there was no relationship between these people because their ancestors had come over here, thousands of years earlier, hundreds of years earlier.
The people are saying in the chat, do you have any sources for this? Where's your sources at?
Where's my sources?
Yes.
My sources are articles in archaeological peer-reviewed journals. For those people who are very interested, I just do a Google search and put in there Dr. Clive Winters and Indian DNA, and it'll give you about 20 minutes.
Come right up, yeah. Do y'all homework, y'all. Stop always looking for people to do the work for you.
Yeah.
He's leading you to it. All you got to do is go and do the research, dig it up, see if what he's saying is correct. Now, talk to us. Did the Africans? There was a debate last week sometime about the Africans. Did the Africans get here before Columbus? And some of the teachers on here who claim to be scholars, like, we got, who Unc is, the Army Raw Squad and all them boys. They came at you a few times. They say that Christopher Columbus was here before Africans. What do you say to that?
Well, that's kind of a little bit, that would be kind of wrong because, many of the, I forgot the name of the person, but there's mention from some of the followers of Christopher Columbus that they saw Africans selling tobacco up and down the coast, from New York down to South America. These are in the actual reports. But see, also you have to understand is that when you read the Spanish documents, they, a lot of times they talk about these so-called Aztec gods and all these Aztec gods. But at the same time, when you read the Spanish documents, they said that the Aztecs had masjids.
Mm-hmm.
If the Aztecs had masjid, in a sense, that means in a sense that they were Muslims. But it seems as though in a sense we lose sight of this reality because we don't read the original documents, and because we fail to read the original documents, often we get misinformation. Because see, people want to send you down the rabbit hole, and if they can send you down the rabbit hole, then that's how they can control you. Because see, remember, it's to the Europeans' interest. It's to the Europeans' interest to make you feel as a FBA, Foundational Black American, that you have no relationship to this country. It's just like if you go to Jamaica. If you go to Jamaica, you'll find in a sense that the vast majority of people in Jamaica, a lot of them have Irish names. And a lot of those Irish names are not the names of slave masters who used to live in Jamaica. See, that's because the fact is that many of their ancestors came direct from Ireland when Ireland was in a sense inhabited by mainly black Catholics. You see, and so then what happened is this: is that as many of these black Europeans, they began to import in Ukrainian women, and I mean there's several interesting videos on YouTube where they talk about that the Ukrainian woman was supposed to be the symbol of the white woman, and it was by bringing in these Ukrainian women that they were able, in a sense, to over time, after what. If you have a baby with a white woman and the baby comes out light skinned, and then in a sense, if that light skinned baby marries another light skinned baby, before you know it, there's no evidence that there was ever any black in that family, and that's what happened. You see, and so
the Hebrew Israelites, they have something that is called the 12 tribe chart, and on the 12 tribe chart, they have a name called Gad, and Gad supposed to be the people of American Indians. What was the religion, if they had any, or a way of life of the natives? The Israelites tries to pull them in and say that these were Israelites as well.
Well, the thing is this: is that they do that because the fact is that they were monotheistic. They were monotheistic in the sense that they believed in the one God, but they didn't say that they believed in Jehovah or Yahshua or I am. They just said that they believed in one God. And because the fact, in the sense, is that because the fact that black people had the same cultural traditions and the same habits, they would go to an American Indian village and they would see them, cooking a certain way, making pottery a certain way, and they would just assume, oh, these must be ancient Hebrews. No. The ancient Hebrews, remember, they practiced in African culture, because where did the ancient Hebrews come from? Where did they flee from? What the Bible teaches, they flee from where? What country?
From Israel, right?
No. Where did they flee from? They were slaves. They were supposedly slaves where? In
Egypt, in Kemet.
In Egypt. So yeah. They were supposedly slaves in Egypt. Then what culture did they practice? They practiced in African culture.
Right.
And so then therefore, when you look at their cultural traditions, the way they cooked, the only difference is, in a sense, is that they may have didn't in a sense practice many of the stuff. Just like us, you'll find that among Afro-Americans, we like to fry stuff. Whereas you'll find Africans, they like to boil every damn thing. Everything is boiled. That stuff some of it look really nasty, but they like to boil stuff. What is the Jamaican tradition? What about you guys? What do y'all cook? Do y'all use a lot of oil, or do you like to mainly boil your foods? Or
well, I'm not Jamaican.
Yeah. Are you not Jamaican?
No, man. I'm not Jamaican, man.
Oh. So, but if you notice, a lot of people from the West Indies and stuff, they may have, in a sense, they would everybody have their own tradition of cooking,
Right.
So as I said, if you look at Africa, they mainly boil food. If you look at foundational Black Americans, we mainly like to fry stuff,
Right.
We have some boilings like gumbo, goulash or slop. You know, I mean, back in the day, people just threw shit all in the pot, you know, just so they could have enough for everybody to eat. But there were these traditions. But the thing is that as Aboriginal people, they didn't see themselves as being different in any way. You see, you know, that's why if you get a skeleton and you excavate an area and you an old Indian village, and then when you pull that skeleton out, that skeleton is going to carry the same genes that you carry. So they're going to carry the same genes you carry, the same genes I carry, because African people acquired these genes 20, 30,000 years ago, at least 7,000 years ago. And so if people were moving, then therefore, in a sense, it's going to be very difficult for you to say, oh, these weren't Africans. These were Black Americans. And then they'll say, but hey, they're carrying the YR chromosome. So they must be related to Anzac boy who carried it 10,000 years ago. See, genetics is true, but genetics can't tell you where you came from. You know what I'm saying? Genetics can't tell you where you came from. That's why, you know, that's why people, in a sense, if you've ever had a genetics test taken, you know, it'll show that you got 20% here, 30% there, another 30% down there. Then therefore, in a sense, what happens is, you know, they just say that the one that they find the most, because see, when they do a study, when they analyze your genome or your genetic profile, it's all type of genes that come up, you know, haplogroups. But then they'll say that the one that they count the most of, then they'll say, oh, that's what you are. Whereas you also may show other haplogroups or other genes that could maybe place you in another place. See, this is why it was a fallacy. Many people had hoped that if they could do genetic testing, they could get an accurate, you know, and concise, you know, representation of where they came from. When your genetic profile cannot do that.
Do you believe in God? And if so, what God would that be?
I believe in God as the creator. I call my God the wonderful one. And I think in a sense is that, you know, people in a sense have different names for God. But I mean, remember, what did the Bible say that God's name is? God said that he was what? I am.
There you go.
He said, that's I am. And then, you know, growing up in the hood, you know, I don't know about you, but I grew up in Chicago. So I was around a lot of Hebrew Israelites. Nigga, what are you talking about? It's Yahweh, Yahshua. No, baby, no. They just said God, Captain. They said
you
God.
had any battles back in the days with the Israelites?
No, we used to always work mainly see eye to eye.
Okay.
Because I knew their history, you know.
Right.
I knew the fact, in the sense that I knew that they were talking about the fact is that we're going to all go back, and that we were the chosen people, that we were the people, in a sense, who were supposed to go back, and we would take the land that our what is it? How do it go with the Bible? I would take the land you did not know. Your parents did not know. The gods you worship, you will not see the food you eat, all that type of mess. So I understood that representation. But see, but at the same time, you know, the history is much more complicated, because, as I said, it had to have been somebody in those Aboriginal villages who could speak Hebrew or Arabic, because when the Moors came over here trading, when the Spanish came, the Spanish always took somebody with them. The interpreter spoke Arabic. And see, Arabic, if you studied Semitic language,
Shaka?
Yeah.
What's up?
Yo, I'm gonna call you back. I'm live right now, right?
All right, guys.
All right. Yeah, I was calling Shaka earlier to set up something with this right here. But go ahead, brother. I want you to begin your PowerPoint when you can.
Okay.
I know you got a powerful PowerPoint for us, and then we'll open up for question and answers. Moses, get ready, Moses 777. When people call themselves by the names of, like, let's say Jesus, Moses, is that blasphemy? Because it's supposed to be God.
I don't know if it could be considered blasphemy, but
wouldn't it be considered disrespectful though to call yourself? like Black Jesus Minister, or some of them call themselves Moses 777. You know, they call themselves the name after these characters in the Bible.
Well, the thing is, this is that you have to remember is that we are in a sense a very ignorant people. You know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the fact that we're an ignorant people, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for us to be able, in a sense, to understand, you know, a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, and the reason that they can't understand it is because the fact, in a sense, is that we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned to believe. We've been conditioned to believe, in a sense, is that whatever people tell you is the truth. When a lot of things that people tell you have no real, in a sense, reality. See, I grew up around a lot of Hebrew Israelites back in the day, and they had some good game, you know, because you remember, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, you know, they were supposed to be the wisest people because they knew the Bible. And you know, the Bible was supposed to be a mysterious thing. I was always taught growing up is that you can't understand the Bible, and that you know, and because you couldn't understand the Bible, that meant that the priest or the Kohen or the preacher, they had a lot of more power over you, because the fact, in the sense, is that they were supposed to be able to know the Bible. You see, but this was all a fallacy. You know, this is all a fallacy. But if you notice, I mean, even today, much today. Or maybe I'm old and I don't hang around those people. Back in the day, you know, people kill you over that stuff, man. They kill you. And, you know, if you started trying to teach them the truth, if you started telling them that, I mean, that Jesus was this or the ancient Hebrews did that, they would kill you. Back in what was it, 72, 73, I went to a meeting with a meeting with the Nation of Islam. And so then, you know, I always did a lot of research, so I knew a whole lot of mess. So then they asked the question, what about this or that? So I got up and I gave a speech. And so they said, yeah, brother, you know, we want you to come back next week, you know. Just come back next Friday. You know, we want to talk to you about this and talk to you about that. So the brother who belonged to the organization, he said, Clyde, don't come back because they're going to kill you and your wife. You know, and so then I didn't go back, but this is the way it is.
Let's get to your presentation. It's up. I see it, and it's running right now. Y'all get ready because brother is going to drop.
Let me see. Okay. Black Indians, a hidden heritage and historical erasure. Examining the African and Aboriginal Americans in colonial America and earlier. First of all, in the sun, B1. Yes, we're B1, black first. But not only does black mean to be, in a sense, black as an ethnicity, but also black means brilliant. So we're black and brilliant. Yes. We're black and brilliant. And because we're black and brilliant, then therefore, in a sense, we are able to expand and be much more understanding of who and what we are, you see. Let me see. Okay. B1 means black first or brilliant first. You know, if you want to find out more about what I'm doing, you can find this. You can find the research on Amazon.com, and you know, you'll be able, in a sense, to learn more about.
Hey, okay, Max,
new things the individual must conduct research.
Yeah, I need you to throw Clyde Winner's link in the chat so the people can know where they can find him at. Throw Dr. Clyde Winner's link in the chat so they could subscribe and find him, and you know.
I don't know.
All right, you moved your presentation.
Let me see. Let's see. Boom. Share screen.
All right, your screen is sharing. I see it. You got Frederick Douglass up there.
Okay.
You heard me? Oh, he probably can't hear me.
Oh yeah, I can see it. Okay, you have to be an independent thinker. You have to be an independent thinker to employ new and old sources of knowledge to discover new things. If you want to find out more about Blacks and Ancient Americans, get my book, The Phylogeography of Afro-Americans and Africans. We Are Not Just Africans, and the History of Blacks in America, from Prehistory to 1877. These are some other books I've written: Atlantis in Mexico, African Empires in Ancient America, We're Not Just Blacks, The Mandy in Ancient America. All these books will help you to understand how we became the Black people. You know, you also may want to understand how I became a researcher. And I became a researcher. I outline how I became a researcher in my autobiographical book, and it's called Pathfinder: Clyde Winner's in Search of the Roots of Afrocentrism, a memoir. In this book, I discuss how I became an Afrocentric researcher. Also discuss, in a sense, how I became me. And this is something very interesting, because see, back in the day when I used to go to international conferences, I'd be the only brother there from the USA, you know. And they'd always, and the people always had to argue with me. You're not FBA. No, you're African. You know, you can't be FBA because FBAs don't do research. But no, I was that brother from 47th Street. Yes, 47th Street. Because see, I always remember 47th Street because by growing up on 47th Street, I was very lucky. Around the corner, I grew up on Evans. Around the corner on Cottage Grove, they used to have, in a sense, a mosque, and it was a mosque of the Nation of Islam. And what happened is that these brothers, they used to share with me, you know, the Arabic language. So I picked up a little bit of the Arabic language. I went and when I went to high school, I studied French, and I could read French and write French real good back in the day, because I wanted to know French, because French was the langue amour, the language of love. And you know, I mean, hey, you couldn't be a player unless you could maybe speak that French, but that was all bullshit, because sisters didn't even know what I was talking about. Who are we? Where did we come from? We are not just African. These are questions that must be answered. Questions that must be answered by foundational Black Americans. FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry, or pedigree. As a result, we are descendants of the Black Europeans, Africans, and Aboriginal Blacks who built the United States. Yes. We are the result of a tripartite origin. A tripartite origin, an origin that is so beautiful, that is so important. But because the fact, in a sense, is that we've always been here. See, we've always been here. See, people forget that the United States began in 1776. Then by 1818, they stopped importing, slaves, enslaved people from Africa. So therefore, the majority of people here have always been here. You see, have always been here. Many of our ancestors who became enslaved people were not brought here from Africa. They were kidnapped from Indian villages, over here in North America. Yes. Our heritage as Aboriginal people is a heritage in the sense that's much more mysterious. It's much more poignant because of the fact in the sense is that we've been grounded here. Yes, foundational Black Americans have been grounded in these Americans, in these United States. When Columbus came to the New World, he found Black Indians on the Caribbean islands. Yes, these are Caribs. These are Caribs. These are the people that the British and the Spanish and the Portuguese met when they went to the Caribbean islands. See, these are your Caribs. Except for the red bandana, they could have been like any other group that you would have maybe found in Africa or even some parts of Asia. But these were the people that the Europeans first met. Europeans fought many wars against these Indians. Yes, yes, yes. You know, the most important war was the Yamasee Wars. But see, what's very interesting is that look at these people. Note the red bandana worn by the warrior in the front. You see the warrior in the front, he's got a red bandana. Then you see another brother with a shield, and he's wearing a kufi hat. And then behind this brother, there's another brother wearing a turban. This shows you, in a sense, the multi-ethnic character of these people, you see. Note the red bandana worn by the warriors. Yes, we see that this red bandana, look over there at the top left hand, and you see that the red bandana was also being worn by the first Caribbean people. So it's something about this red bandana. You know, maybe one day, family, you might find a book that where maybe the people who are wearing these red bandanas discuss why they wore this particular headband. But this is something, in a sense, that I think is very interesting that relates to our identity as a FBA, or Foundation of Black Americans. Black Indians are often described as mixed or runaway slaves adopted by native tribes. William Katz and Caleb Gale argue that Africans found refuge among indigenous tribes and then married. This history has been marginalized or erased in mainstream historical narratives. This was false. You know, these Black people were indigenous to these United States. They were indigenous to these United States. Look at this picture. You know, let's go from left to right. There's a brother wearing a red bandana. Then when you move down, when you go further to the right, you see a brother with a kufi hat on. And then finally, you see a brother with a turban and a feather in his turban. This is just to show you that America has always been a multi-ethnic society. FBA are not just African. You understand? FBA are not just African, and we're not just African because of the fact, in the sense that we have, in a sense, a tripartite origin. We have an origin, in a sense, because we were always connected to the old world. Native Americans and Africans united against slavery and colonial oppression. In an NPR discussion in 2010, Katz, the researcher Katz, emphasized the early presence of Africans in America post-Columbus. This was made evident in the 19th annual report of the Bureau of American Ethnography, where we see mention of Indian slavery alongside African slavery. Foundational Black Americans were Aboriginal in most cases. Yes, we were Aboriginals. We were already here. Indian tribes were enslaved and sold alongside Africans. Cherokee, Tuscarora, Natchez, and Appalachian tribes faced enslavement. Over time, native tribes dwindled, leading to intermarriage and cultural mingling, merging with Africans. The Paleo-American controversy. Debate over the origin of the first Americans is very interesting. Some researchers suggest the Mongoloids were the first people to settle North America, and they came to America, via the Bering Straits, up around the North Pole and all that. Others propose Paleo-Americans had African, Australian, and Melanesian features. And this is based on the fact that many archaeologists, once they dig up the skeletal remains of Paleo-Americans, once they do a craniometric analysis. A craniometric analysis is an analysis of the cranium of these African people. And when they study the cranium of these African people, they find, in a sense, is that the characteristics of the skull are the characteristics that are common to African people. That's why, in a sense, they classify these people as Negroid or Negro people. It's no big deal. But again, in a sense, if you don't know the research, then you can be led astray because you won't even know that this is a real existence. These are some of the reconstruction of the Naia, who was the first Mexican, the first European, and Lucia. Let me tell you what they did. What they did is that they get these skulls, and then researchers who have experience working with these skulls, what they do is that they take these skulls and then they begin to put clay on the skulls, and they're able, in a sense, to reconstruct how these people look. And see, this is one of the reasons that forensic archaeology has become a very popular way to try to demonstrate how the ancient people looked, not only in the Americas but also in Europe. But these in a sense, these Naia, Lucia, these are constructions of women. I found that what I found very interesting is that the research shows that mostly all the ancient skeletons that these people find are women. Sometimes I wonder why do the women's skeletons seem to last longer than male skeletons? But that's another story. Maybe I'll find out in the future. These are some of the various Paleo-Americans: Naia, Apiuna, Lucia. All of these ancient Americans are based upon reconstructions of how these people look, based upon the craniums or the skulls that they found in these various excavations. Debate over the origin of the first Americans. Some researchers suggest Mongoloid migration via the Bering Straits. Others propose Paleo-Americans had African, Australian, or Melanesian features. And again, they're making these assumptions, which they say is truth, based upon skeletal remains such as this, a cranium like this. And they look at this, they study. If you look at this carefully, the main area which they use to identify Black people is around. If you look at this skull, it's around that nose. It's that nose area. It seems as though the nose area betrays your lineage. If you're African, Asian, or whatever. So a lot of times, in a sense, it's by examining these features, measuring the skulls, looking at the nose, or where the nose was, can in a sense help you to identify the earliest people. There's a thing called the Solutrean hypothesis, and what we find is that let's look at this map. If you look at this map on the right-hand side, you see that the so-called Solutrean culture originated in South Africa. We see that over time, even though in a sense the Solutrean culture, and they base this on the stone tools that the people used. And see, archaeologists, what they do is that they look at these stone tools that people made, in ancient times, and then each stone tool from a particular culture were made in a certain way that is unique to that culture. And that's how they're able, in a sense, to look at these stone tools made at these various archaeological sites and say, well, hey, the earliest tools were found here, so that's the origin of the people who made those tools. Then another tool set was made somewhere else. So we find that the Solutrean tools that were in a sense originally made in South Africa, they spread not only into North Africa, but into Europe, and then later they came into the Americas in a sense. And so people, in a sense, can say that, because we find Solutrean tools in Africa, and the oldest Solutrean tools are found there, and then we find identical tools in North America, this shows the evidence, or this is the evidence. This is the evidence that there were already, people from Africa in the Americas. And see, you have to use evidence. If you're going to talk about history, if you're going to talk about ethnicity of ancient peoples, you have to look at the archaeological evidence. You have to look at the toolkits that these ancient people made and they used. William Byrd, who was an early colonist who settled much of the United States, he described the dark-skinned Indians as mahogany in color. Baron Lahoutan also described Native Americans as having dark olive-toned skin. Colonial records confirm Native Americans were often described as dark-skinned. Yes, it's very important to understand is that that there's no one black variety. Black people come in all type of colors. There's light skin, dark skin, red bone, all type of black people. They're all black people, and these black people have existed in Africa. Look at the Ethiopians as compared to people from Ghana or Benin. You can see in a sense some black people, these so-called European features, which they can't be European because we were here first, so European features must really be African features, you see. But again, in a sense, we can look at these colonial records and they confirm that the earliest Americans were dark skinned. We also look at the Dawes Act. The Dawes Act was an act that was passed to try to, in a sense, determine who were the real Indians. The Dawes Act of 1887 redistributed communal lands among Native Americans. The Black Indians were placed on the Dawes Freedmen rolls, erasing their tribal identity. Yeah, instead of, in a sense, saying that the Black Indians were native to America, they said that they were, in a sense, freemen. So they could take away their land. See, it's all about taking the land because, see, remember, our ancestors own many parcels of land across these United States. And these parcels of land were illegally taken away from foundational Black American people. And so then they know that today we know from international law that Aboriginal people can now go to court and take back those lands. So they don't want foundational Black Americans to be talking about the lands that we own. They don't want foundational Black Americans to be talking about our lands that were taken away from us by the settlers, because they would have to give it back to us. So then therefore, that's why they want Black foundational Americans to always be thinking about that they're from Africa, instead of recognizing the sense that we were here. We've always been here, you see. Black Indians continue to face exclusion from tribal recognition. Many are denied participation in powwows and tribal events due to a lack of enrollment cards. Yes, now you have to have an enrollment card, and this enrollment card say, oh, you belong to the Cherokee tribe, or you belong to the Chickasaw tribe, or you belong to the Creek. And so then they have these cards, but these cards are distributed by the United States government. And the United States government, because the fact is in their interest to deny the Aboriginal origin or the Aboriginal heritage of foundational Black Americans, they don't want to give you a card. They don't even want you to know, because see, if you know who you are, then you're going to start demanding, give me my money, baby, give me my check, baby, write the check, give me my cash, you see? And there's also racism within Native American communities, and federal policies reinforce this exclusion. In conclusion, the history of Black Indians has been systematically erased. Paleo-Americans evidence supports early African presence in the Americans, but there's an ongoing struggle. Yes, there is an ongoing struggle for us to be given our recognition, to be given our recognition as, in a sense, the people who really, in a sense, are necessary to be here on this land, you see, and therefore, in a sense, we have to understand that it's only by being honest about who and what we are that we can be able, in a sense, to move forward and be able, in a sense, to allow other people to know the righteous character of our claims. And so then that's it, you see.
All right, man. Yeah, very, very interesting information. And so, family, all y'all got to do, excuse me, is go look up the information that the brother bringing and add on to it.
It's if people are really interested, it's a couple of videos. They made a couple of videos recently where they talk about my research on the Aboriginal Indians, and I've published over published over at least 300 articles on various aspects of ancient Black history. That's online, that's in journals. Linguistic, genetic evidence. I've published over 50 books And so the information is out there. But the thing is this is that nobody really wants to know this because see, when you know that FBAs have always been here, it's that question of money. It's that question of money. You see, they are afraid. It's just like my sister, Shanice. Shanice, she was born in London, and her family background is Jamaican and stuff. And see, but she's been doing a lot of fine research to show that England was always a black continent. It was very black until the 100-year war, in which they began to bring in all those mercenaries from the Caucasus Mountains. You see, and so we can see these links. You see, and that's why we find that when you go to places like Jamaica, not Martinique, but Jamaica, and some of the other islands, you'll find people in a sense who will tell you that their ancestors were never in a sense enslaved people. They've always been free, but they have an Irish surname or a British surname, and that's because of the fact that many of these people were black until they began to continually marry white women or continue to marry light-skinned people. For example, if you marry a white woman and you have a mulatto child, if that mulatto child in a sense marries another mulatto, I mean the white people used to say, hey, let's go ahead and have some children with these black Indians because after 2 generations, they're going to be white just like you. See, so this is the white man's plan. His plan, in a sense, his plan has always been to rape the women, and then take their children and have their children intermarry so that they could always boost up the white race, because the white race has always been a minority. But that's how they've been able, in a sense, to obtain power, is by impregnating darker skinned women and then getting their offspring to marry other offspring from other mixed race people so that they could eventually, I think they used to say in 2 generations, Benjamin Franklin said in 2 generations they would be white anyway. So,
You talked to us about the Bering Strait. You spoke to us about the Bering Strait. Were the people who crossed it African or was they Asian?
Well, the thing is, this is that is a very good question. You see, that you could say they were Asian, but they would have been Negroes. You could say they were African, but they would have been Negroes. You could say that they were Americans, but they would have been Negroes. See, the thing is, this is that a lot of people always say, Dr. Winters, when did we become, in a sense, this or that ethnicity or this or that nationality? That's because we choose the nationality or ethnicity in which we want to belong to. For example, most of the countries in Africa are less than 100 years old. Many and the names of many African countries are names that the white man or white woman gave them. You see, and so then, but those tribes within those nations, they may have an ancient history, but the countries don't have as long a history as maybe your ancestry. You can chart your ancestry. Probably you can get your birth certificate of your mom, dad, whatever, and their mom and dad, and you can really chart your history. Whereas most Africans, they can't do what you can do. They're not able to do that because they don't have the records, because their countries didn't exist. See. In fact, I'm 74 years old. I'm older than most African countries. Get out of here, And so again, in a sense, is that it's this lack of knowledge. But we're lucky over here, and we're lucky because the fact is that we do have records. We do have birth certificates, and we have other records, in a sense, that we can use to be able to chart our genealogy.
They don't want us to use the census records because you will learn most of us have been here before. Learn that most of us have been here for over 600 years.
That's probably true, but see, ethno love. Yes, you could do that, but we don't have records in America that go back 600 years. But you see, but the thing is, this is that if you really started to look at your ancestral records, what you would find, in a sense, is that sometimes they go back. Like Dr. Short. Dr. Short, I love his research, and his research. He's been charting back his research over here. Dr. Short lives in Washington, D.C. And he's been able, in a sense, to chart his ancestors once once you leave this place, they go all the way back to Charlemagne. See,
All right, we talk about the Africans have always been here. But if the Africans have always been here in America, then was the transatlantic slave trade passage real?
Yeah, the slave trade. We know the slave trade was real because we know.
No, I know. Were we here before the transatlantic slave trade?
Yeah, we were here before the transatlantic slave trade. But see what happened around 1631. 1631, a lot of Europeans began to have rice plantations and tobacco plantations. And so what happened is that because of the fact there was an expansion in the number of tobacco and rice plantations, they needed labor. They didn't have enough in a sense indentured servants to work on these plantations. So what they did is that they started kidnapping Aboriginal people because they were black, and then putting them in slavery. That's why you find some cases back in the 1800s where people were, in a sense, who had been classified as Negro were shown, in a sense, that their ancestry was really Aboriginal. See, history is very complicated because you dealt with a people who was lazy, and because these people were lazy, they wanted somebody else to do the work for them. You see, and then because of the fact that we were willing to sell each other. I don't know why as black people we hate each other so much. And we can be so mean to each other. Sa.neter, we can be so mean.
Yeah.
We can, a lot of us can forgive what an Asian or a white person does with us, and we'll be ready to kill a brother because he stepped on my shoes because I just had him shine. Or when I was in school, you stepped on somebody's tennis. What the hell is a tennis shoe? Hey, you dirty my tennis shoe, nigga. What? Ready to kill you over stuff like that. But that's because of the fact, in the sense, is that we have these hostilities. I don't know if these hostilities were ingrained in us doing slavery, or if they've always existed. You see, they've always existed because there's always been competition among the people.
Okay, Nepal Shada, Queen Nepal Shada, you have a question for him?
Yes, thank you so much, sa.neter, for bringing Dr. Clyde Winters on again. Peace to the audience. Peace to you, Dr. Clyde Winters.
How do you do?
I'd like to start out asking you a question about the phenotypical differences, the stark phenotypical differences between the people who say they're Native Americans today, the ones that that are commonly identified as Native Americans, who look more phenotypically Chinese or Japanese. I think they look more phenotypically Asian and even more phenotypically Siberian than they look Negro. Can you explain why there's a big difference between how those people look and how black, so-called Negroes look? If Negroes were in fact the first Native Americans, and if we're the same people.
Okay, first of all, if you really seriously look at most Red Indians, many of them do not look Asiatic. I'm sorry to say, some of them look Asiatic, some of them don't. The only thing that characterized the Indians in the old days were high cheekbones, maybe and the strong in the eyes, and these were also characteristics that were common to the people that we call the Negro, because see, the thing is this, is that there was never been this one group, you see, because see, many of the so-called Red Indians, because the fact, in a sense, is that they early mated with white people so that they could get the mulattoes. They wanted the mulattoes. They wanted, in a sense, to emulate their white fathers. That's what caused a whole lot of trouble. That's how they became much more light-skinned today than they were in the past. And in fact, most of the Indians today are pretendians. They're pretending Indians because of the fact, in a sense, is that they were sent by the federal government to various parts of the United States to pretend that they are the descendants of the former Black Indians who lived in maybe California, lived in Kansas, lived in Illinois. You see, they're pretendians. They're pretendians. They're not the original people, but because of the fact that the government gave them a card, and this card say you're Cherokee, this card say you're Chickasaw, that's it. Okay, just like look at the Chickasaw. Look at the Chickasaw. Now look. Chickasaw meant runaway slave. Think about that. Chickasaw meant runaway slave. So the Chickasaws were mainly Black people who had ran away and lived in the swamps. And yet today you got people in not Chickasaw but Seminoles. And so you got these Seminoles in Florida saying that they're Seminoles, but they're Red Indians, when the Seminoles are descendants of the slaves that ran away and hid in the swamps and stuff like that. And yet all somebody can do, all you have to do is get a card from the European, and the federal government will say what you are. See, it's all to deny the Aboriginal heritage of Black people. Because see, if you're the Aboriginal people, that means that your people own land. That means if your people own land, that means that land is still yours according to international law. And so they try to make sure in the sense that you don't know who you are, where you came from, so they can make sure in the sense that you can't get your land.
Okay, so basically the people have straight, Black, long hair, the women and the men, and the ones with the strong epicanthal fold in their eyes. Some people call that slanted. Mm-hmm. These people with the round faces, who would have been classified as Mongoloid in the obsolete race classification. Those people are not Native Americans. They're Caucasian.
No, they're descendants of they're people in the sense of descendants. So you got to remember in the sense of that. Where did these people come from? Where are these people? They do not look. Red Indians do not look like Chinese. They don't even look like Filipinos, do they?
Well, a lot of them do look like what we would call Chinese, or what they say Asian.
No, they don't. No, they don't. How could you say they look? That's why when you look at anthropological texts, they've always had in a sense the Red Indians as an outliner. They say that they're Mongoloid because they want to say they came from East Asia, but they don't really look like Chinese or Filipinos and stuff like that. No, they're unique people, and most of them have this uniqueness because their original ancestors were the Black Aboriginals who lived here, and then in a sense because of the fact that as these Black people mixed with some of these Indians who followed the buffalo. Buffalo used to be spread all the way from the west to Virginia, and these Red Indians, they followed the buffalo, and then when they met us, then we adopted them, and then when we adopted them, we allowed them to use our names, and so you would have a tribe of Black Indians, and then you have a tribe of Red Indians, but because we adopted them, we allowed them to use our names. But that doesn't mean that they're the original people. But then the European, to make sure in a sense that he can dominate and make sure that you can't get your land that they took from you, then they say, oh, these red people, these Red Indians are the Aboriginal people, so that they can make sure that you're unable to get your land. You see? Now that's an Eskimo right there. And then look at the cheekbones, that's an Eskimo. But again, the sense is that if you notice, they don't look Chinese. He looks kind of close. He has the Afro, but many of us have the same, many of us from West Africa have that same that same so-called fold over our eyes.
All right, let's move along. Genesis, you there? You up next?
Yeah, I'm here. So I have a question. All right.
Go ahead.
But I kind of wanted to share my screen real quick to show what I'm trying to talk about.
Go ahead, hopefully.
Okay, so there is this thing called the Tartarian Empire. I'm gonna go kind of get into some weird stuff here. So from what I understood is that there is this hidden empire that existed in China and Russia called the Tartarians that actually like were Mongolese, that because we think about Indians as these people riding on horses with feathers in their head, you know what I'm saying? And they're just following the buffalo. But then when you talk about American civilization, there's like this underlying story about these buildings, like the Capitol building, certain cathedrals, and things like that, that are like what people are saying that are older than we think that they are, right? And that we think that these things came from a Tartarian civilization that came from Russia, China, that came from over the Bering Strait, and that these people were building these civilizations, these buildings that were like that we think that came that they said, oh, the Spaniards.
All right, let's get to the point. Let's get to it.
So all right. So from what there's these buildings still exist, and then if you actually look at the buildings, you'll see that these structures exist. We were not like when we talk about the Indians on the back of a horse and people like running with the buffalo, there was actually civilization here with buildings, huge structures, very colossal structures that were in America before, like that were here for ancient, like thousands of years. So how does your narrative fit into those colossal structures that people have found to exist in America before like any Native Americans?
I don't know what is. There's no deviation. You see, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe 3,000-4,000 years ago they made gigantic roads. If they made gigantic roads, we know they were roads because they were made above land. That means in a sense is that they must have had wheeled vehicles. Okay, archaeologists tell you that Americans didn't have wheeled vehicles, right? And they tell you that Americans in a sense didn't have any animals to pull the wheeled vehicles like horses or cattle, right? Is that what they teach you? But they got these roads. Why do they have these roads? See.
Yeah, like I've seen where they dug up the road, and it's a stone road underneath, like the thing with actual railroad tracks and everything that are like miles.
They haven't found any railroad tracks. But they found roads though. But see,
I've seen like actual images of railroad tracks underneath.
No, they don't have any railroad tracks. Not maybe going back that long, but they have found roads. I'm going to tell you something. If I wanted to go, I try to talk about what I can prove and what I can support. I wouldn't be surprised. Now listen to me, and I'm telling you this. This is just one of my harebrained ideas. I really believe that people in ancient America had automobiles that ran off water. Because we know how many times have brothers made engines in the last 10 years they could run off water, then somebody would kill them. You see, those roads existed. If those roads existed, then therefore in a sense they had to use some sort of a means of transportation to carry those roads.
Well, I know that they said the cathedrals, the Catholic cathedrals, you see those with the like pipes and stuff like that those existed before any American Columbus, anyone came here. These are like old like structures.
That could be true. They could be built upon something. But the whole point is that what does it matter? What does it matter?
It matters because you're saying that people were on like they make it sound like we were on teepees, riding on horses, doing all this other stuff when they actually had like civilization and buildings and stuff.
They didn't say black people on teepees. Remember the original Indians. They lived in wooden and stone. They lived in wooden and stone towns. It was the red Indians the nomadic red Indians who had teepees. When you look at the Indians that the Spanish and the early colonists talk about, they lived in houses. They lived in wooden houses with chimneys and all that type of mess. They lived in often these houses are described as resembling some of the houses that were built in Ireland back in the day. Those people living in the teepees Those are recent Red Indians that migrated up from Mexico into North America. But see, we don't really know. I do know this is that we did have roads in America that date back 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. And so then if it wasn't any transport animals, I'd believe they drove around in cars. I can't prove that. I'm not going to even promote that idea. What I'm just saying is that these roads existed. They say that Americans didn't have the will at that time. But the point is this, is that I'm not going to go into fantasy. I'd rather talk about things that I can support from an archaeological perspective that have in a sense a concrete. And what I mean by concrete evidence is evidence that we can feel, touch, and that we can see. But I mean, just like when you go down to South America, and they got all these pictures that when you look down, you can see that they made pictures on mountains and on the earth. They had to have been flying around and stuff. But they say, but that's not in a sense what the so-called experts say. And so then you have to in a sense understand. You can go off into the fantasy world and you can talk about fantasy stuff, but I'd rather talk about things that I can substantiate or that I believe in the sense that I can find concrete physical evidence.
All right. Moving right along. King J doing tattoos. All right. That's cool. Let me go to 7. 7 Asar. What's up? You on the call, brother? Unmute yourself.
Uh-oh. You got me? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. Make sure everything is good. Okay. I want to say peace to you, sa.neter. Peace to Queen Nepal, and peace to Dr. Winters and everybody on the panel and in the chat.
Peace.
I got a couple of questions for you, brother. Maybe you can give me some information, get a little deeper in it. We know out of the 12 million Africans that were taken from the transatlantic slave trade, around that number, only around 300 to 400,000 came to North America, right? And we know that that's what the scholars say. Those are rough numbers, right?
Yeah.
But so, huh? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. 200,000.
You would say 200,000?
That's what they claim.
Oh, okay. I read around 388,000. Maybe the information I read was off.
Yeah.
But I also heard you say there were more Native Americans enslaved than Africans, right? And I read around between 2 million and 5 million Native Americans may have been enslaved. Is that number correct?
No, we don't know how many.
Okay. So we don't know how many were enslaved. I did read that mostly Africans were enslaved over Native Americans. But my question to you is this. Since there's an ambiguous nature into what Indian or Native American is in this country, because we use that term Indian, which was created by Europeans, how do you determine who's an Indian and who isn't? You know what I'm saying? When you were talking to Sister Nepal about the Red Indian, are those people native to those Red Indians? Are they native? Or are they children of other native people that had the African phenotype?
See, that's the whole problem that you get into. What is a native? How long does it take before you become native to a land? See,
I agree with that. That goes into my next question. Go ahead.
No, that's the confusion. The confusion is what is a native? See, because as I said earlier, if I dig up a skeleton today, if I analyze the DNA of that skeleton, most of them are going to be carrying the R1 Y chromosome. Okay. Or it's going to be V88 or V48. And so therefore, once I dig up this, then they're going to be carrying the same genes that the earliest skeletons of Europe were carrying. So what makes you American as opposed to a European? It's just that you choose that title. You choose that title. You see. See, if you're looking for some way to have a unique representation of the people here, all you can say is that the people here can claim to be whoever they want to be. You see what I'm saying? Because see, you know, black people got their genes thousands of years ago. So you're not going to be able, in a sense, to use genetics as a way to identify or separate people into groups.
Okay, that goes into my next question then. Do you believe the Africans or the native Indians you refer to here, were they conceived here, or do you believe the out of Africa theory and we migrated here?
I believe in the senses that they migrated here, you know.
Okay.
And the reason that I believe that is I look at the tools. As I said, some of the earliest people that lived in North Carolina and Virginia, they used Solutrean tools. And the Solutrean toolkit originated in Southern Africa. So then therefore I have to assume, since the oldest Solutrean tools don't come from America, they come from Africa, I had to assume that there was a migration of African people into the Americas who carried these solutions.
I agree. Do you agree that some Africans got stranded here from the Bering Strait, traveling the Bering Strait, as we have some record of?
No.
No, you don't believe that?
No,
do you believe in
DNA? Do I accept DNA? Yes, I believe in DNA.
Okay.
But I know that most of the the DNA, all Africans carry all the DNA haplogroups, and we've carried all those haplogroups for 7,000 years. And so then therefore, just like the majority of people over here, you know, like you go to Anzac Boy carried the so-called R1 haplogroup. Now they say it was C. It was really R1. R1 is also carried by black people who were the first people in Europe. You see, and they're also the first people who were in Africa. And so then therefore, you know, if you go into this genetic stuff, genetics cannot save you. You know, genetics cannot answer all the questions that people have. You know.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Thank you. Let's get Jose Francis in the building. What's up, brother?
Good day. How are you?
Good, man. What's happening?
I have a comment and a question. The comment is I was looking up something on the Olmecs and I accidentally ended up on one of the brothers' articles, the doctor's articles about the Olmec language. And I did a little Google searching, and it said that the Olmec culture is mostly archaeological, and they actually have no human remains. Is that true?
Most of the Olmec culture is, you know, everything comes from archaeology, but it's one of the oldest cultures in Mexico.
Right, but they have no human remains, correct? They have no direct.
What's that?
Is it true that they have no direct human remains that are identifiable as Olmec remains?
Correct, because the bodies don't last long in the soil.
Right.
Most of the soil destroys the bodies in Latin America.
Right. So then that means they can't directly say where these people
so
came from.
We just have images.
Right. So then they can't directly say where the Olmec came from then, correct?
What did you say?
I said then scientists and people who analyze it can't directly say that the Olmecs are African then, based on any empirical data. It's just sort of a theory. Or is that not?
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, you can't say that they not.
The Olmecs had their own, but the Olmecs had their own writing system.
Yeah, but if you say
the writing system was the writing system used in Africa. See, the Olmecs.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. If you're gonna say that you can't have no proof, or there's no proof that you can find out if they're African, then you don't have no proof. to say that they are African. So you just say we don't know. You don't know.
Right, but sa.neter,
that's not what I said.
It's a theory.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying either.
Yeah, I said you can prove they're African because the fact, in a sense, is that their writing system, the oldest archaeological evidence of their writing system comes from Africa. Because the oldest evidence of their writing system comes from Africa, then therefore, in a sense, they had to have taken this writing system from Africa to in a sense, Mexico, because we don't find the oldest writing in Africa goes back 4,000 years. But we know the Olmec civilization began around 1000 BC. That's what the archaeologists claim. And since the Olmecs, in a sense, they just popped up on the land, and their civilization came out of nowhere already in a sense, already made, and therefore, in a sense, we know that the Olmec came from somewhere else. But there was already Black people here. There's already Black people here when the Olmecs came.
Okay, yeah, all right. Thank you,
All
Dr.
right. Neil, you on the call, brother. Neil Spite, what up, brother?
Hey, what's up, family? Peace to the panel, peace to the family. Real quick to the doctor. Dr. Clyde Winters, I read a lot of your works, good works. I wanted to ask a question, your opinion on two things. One is the Meretic writings, have they been deciphered? I know you were probably working on them. I don't remember. That's my first question. And do you think it's going to bring some powerful revelations out of it if it does be deciphered or not?
What writing system was that?
The Meretic, in Nubia, the Meretic script.
Yeah, I deciphered that writing back. I deciphered that writing back 20 years ago.
Wow.
And as soon as I'm dead, those white man is going to say, there was a Dr. Winters who did this and did that, but this is what it's all about. They're gonna see as soon as I'm dead, it's gonna be so many white people picking up my shit. Excuse me, I'm sorry for the profanity. Excuse me, Netta. But so it's gonna be so many white folks that are gonna say, well, Dr. Winters did this and he did that, and this is what it is. But yeah, I deciphered Meroitic years ago.
Okay, I'm gonna check that. Yeah. I'm gonna check that out on your site. And then my second question was, since the manuscripts of Timbuktu are starting to resurface, in the public side, instead of the family just holding them down, you think it's a lot of information in those scripts that's connecting America to West Africa?
I doubt it.
Okay.
Because see, it's very complicated. A lot of the writing is jurisprudence. A lot of it has to deal with Islamic law, and a lot of it is just discussions. And many people in West Africa, they write in what's called a Jami, and a Jami is the language, is the native language of the people. So a lot of the writings, a lot of the Arabic manuscripts are not written in the Arabic language. A lot of them are written in the local language of the people, but they just use Arabic characters.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the answers, boss. Yep.
All right. Sankofa, what's up, brother? You up next?
All right, yo, peace, light and love to the panel. Peace, Dr. Winters. Glad to be able to speak with you.
Your mic is messed up. Your mic a little bit.
Hold on. All right, how's this?
All right, talk a little louder. You good?
All right. I had a question in reference to the from your perspective, what impact and influence did the French fur trading activity have on in their African slave trade activity have on the peopling of North America, the African peopling of North America, especially in that Louisiana territory prior to its movement to the United States, moving the Louisiana territory to the United States?
I think it had very little impact, and the reason that it had very little impact is that Louisiana was already heavily inhabited by native people, But the thing is, this is that so A lot of times people like to say that Louisiana is connected to the Caribbean because of Mardi Gras and all that type of stuff. But that's an area in a sense that's always been kind of integral with this whole idea. But see, the only difference between the French settlement of Louisiana and the British settlement was that that you would have found, in a sense, maybe more Bantu maybe more people who spoke Bantu languages, and maybe spoke, in a sense, maybe Nigerian languages, as opposed to the people who would have been in the Midwest, and the people in the Midwest, the people in New England, they'd have been speaking more Senegambian languages,
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, you good? You good, Sankofa?
I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Okay, Uno L, what up, man? You on the call, bro? Unmute yourself.
Can't hear you.
Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Okay, he went out. Okay, so thank you. Hey Jay, you wanted to say something before we close out? Because Winters, he got to go pick up his grandbaby.
Oh, go ahead. I appreciate it. I'll jump on the next panel.
Hey man, I didn't know you was a tattoo genius.
I have a little.
Where you from? Where you from?
I got a little bit.
I'm from Illinois. I'm up here. So Mr. Winters, are you familiar with the Cahokia mound builders?
Yeah.
I live in Illinois. I'm close to Cahokia, Illinois. Would you say that those mounds are comparable to what we would say in our Kemetic society as pyramids, just a different material use, or what's the connection?
They would have been pyramidal, but remember, originally they had stone monuments on those, and there's a tunnel. There used to be a tunnel underneath, in a sense, Cahokia, that went underneath the Mississippi River. So as you can see, there was a whole lot of technology going on here, but a lot of the technology of these people is not known, because the whole point is that how do you explain these stone roads, 4-lane roads? And these 4-lane roads, they're built above ground. They're not built beneath, they're above ground. So that meant, in a sense, that these people built these roads. How did they travel those roads if they didn't have wagons and horses and all that type of stuff? So a lot of stuff is hidden from us. And until we can get somebody, until we can get, it was a book back in the 70s called The Spook Set by the Door. And this is supposed to have been a brother who belonged to the CIA, and he happened and he found out a lot of secret information. Until we can get the spook who sits next to the museums in Washington D.C. and see what's underground. Under the Smithsonian Institute, they said it's a city under there, a city, just like the London Museum. There's a city under there. You see, it's so much under there that they're hiding from us, and that we only can sample it. Because see, if they've taken these monuments.
All right. Yes. Let me go to
Can I ask a question?
No, hold on. Let me get everybody on.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Uno L, what up, man? Unmute yourself, Uno L.
What's going on, Si? You can hear me good?
I hear you, brother.
All right. My question is, with the word play, right? Like, if we the original people of the land, then why we study saying like the slave trade if it's kings and queens, and we was actually captured by the slaves of Europe that was doing work for the kings and queens of Europe, so it was pretty much like a kings and queens from one side of the planet attacking kings and queens from the other side of the planet. And we hold on to this title of like the slave trade. And clearly we not slaves. Like Like regardless of where we from, we not slaves. So we could take that title and we got to kind of let go of that title, I believe.
No, we
Because
can't.
we
can't let go of that title. You can't
a
let go of that
slave
title.
like
You can't
that's
let go
not
of that title because that title shows the trauma. It shows the terror. You know, in every plantation, they used to have a nigga. I'm sorry, they used to have a black man, and they'd get a pole and they'd nail it from his ass and have it come out through his mouth. Then they'd put around the damn. When you came into every plantation, it was a black man's head hanging from over the damn pedestal when you came in, and it was rotting. It was terror. You can never, ever, ever forget what happened to us during slavery because it explains why they owe us money. It also shows that out of all of this terrorism, out of all of this abuse, we are still fighting. We are still fighting. We're just fighting in a different way. You know, what other people on the planet Earth took their enemies' laws? We took their enemies' laws and flipped the script on their asses. You see? I'm living in a nice home today. I'm not supposed to be living in this house. I'm supposed to be in the damn swamp or in a damn hut. See? You know, you look like you got a beautiful apartment there, sa.neter. You know, we're not supposed to be living in shit like that. Excuse me for the language, but we do. We are. Why? Because we fought. We fought first with our hands. Then we fought with guns, axes, and bows and arrows and shotguns. And now we fight with our mind. You see? We fight with our mind. And it's using our minds to take what is ours. See, I'm not asking you to give me ish. I'm not asking you to give me a damn thing. Give me what's mine. Give me what I'm owed. Give me what I'm owed. You owe me. That's all.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you done talking?
Yes. Well, with the situation of like the brutality of I don't want to say quote unquote slavery, but I believe those are situations that take, like, for example, how you got women like the women that was locked up in the basements in Ohio all them years. I think they was locked up like 10, 15 years in the basement, right? So we study locking on to situations that was happening during these times. Because if all these things was going on during slavery, then how was all these inventions? How were all these inventions being made during the same periods of what they were saying was all this brutality going on? How was all these engines being? Imagine everything was made in America. Wasn't nothing from Europe that came over here to America. We made planes, we made cars, we made the trains, we made the road system. Everything that the world uses, we created here, and they took it from us and they brought it around the world. They claim China is our enemies. Whereas if all these people are our enemies, how do they got guns? How do they got planes? How do they got TVs? How do they got cell phones? But I'll tell you one people that don't got it, Black Americans. See, we being held back from technology. We're not being held back. That's the only thing we're being held back from.
We're not being held back from technology. The whole point is that we made this land. We made the technology. We made the computer work. See, we make the impossible possible. The white man think of something and we make it real. You know, the first computer, the first telephone, the first transistor, we made all that stuff. So it's no question about who made it. You see, now the question comes down to who made the money off of it. And Europeans made the money off of it because Europeans, they had, in a sense, the distribution system. But we made all the inventions. The whole world operates off of the light bulb. The whole world operates off electricity. The first book on electricity was written by a brother. You see, but the thing is that you had to understand is that I'll never forget. One day I went and I was talking to my father. I said, Daddy-O, I used to call him Daddy-O. I said, Daddy-O, we got to turn this mother out. I mean, look at what they're doing to us. We got to kick ass. Blah, 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 blah. I didn't say kick ass. He would have slapped me in my mouth. But I said, we got to get out there. We got to fight. Blah, blah. And he said, calm down, Clyde. He said, Clyde, you see, there's going to always be progress. You just got to take your time. You got to, in a sense, be ready to take the opportunity to get the things that you want, you see, because that man is your enemy. The European is your enemy, but you can use your enemy as your footstool. That's what the Bible taught us, see? Name any other people in the history of the world that were treated so terribly, so badly, and yet today we live in fine houses, have good jobs, making nice money, see? That's not a coincidence. Those things exist today because we fought for those things. We made the invisible visible. Sure, we never got full credit for everything, and we're never going to get full credit for everything because we live under a system of worldwide white supremacy. But even under this system of worldwide white supremacy, look at what we've accomplished. Look at where we at. Look why everybody come to America, you see, to get a comeuppance. The whole world.
Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, meaning that he freed the people around the world, saying that, hey, if you can escape from under the kings and queens of around the world and get to America, you can be free and you can come here and get 20 acres and a mule. And we study asking, where's ours? And we seeing people get the 20 acres and a mule, but we seeing the slaves get it. See, they put Abraham Lincoln on the penny because he turned his back on us.
It wasn't Abraham Lincoln. That was General Grant who did that. As General Grant conquered the South, he gave the blacks that he liberated. He gave them 40 acres and mule. It was later taken back by the government, by at least around 1877.
It was European blacks that came over from Europe.
No.
When we lost the war, them people didn't leave. The soldiers didn't leave. They didn't leave when we lost that war. They stayed in the matches, and they were like, "Y'all can stay out back." But the problem.
Right. Hold on, brother. I'm gonna bring you back. I'm gonna bring you back on. I'm gonna let you talk to Asar. Asar gonna straighten it all out. Nepal, you got your question?
Yes, I do actually. I want to take it back to the question about the difference between these people who are known to be Asian and African, or are they one people? I did want to screen share this information here, or these pictures. This is a website. I know some people are familiar with it. It's just the Ancient Origins website, and in the Southwest, Arizona included, in the Southwest, they have these pictographs on different stones, on different writings. On different sites in the Southwest, and these are Chinese handwriting. This is like handwriting from 1046 BC. I'm wondering. It said that these weren't even the people who migrated from over the Bering Land Strait. But it is in fact from Chinese people. They're not. So what I'm saying is, it's not saying that these are the people who migrated over the Bering Strait. However, historically, these are confirmed to be Chinese writing. This is confirmed to be from Chinese people in 1046 BC and maybe even older. Can you explain how there's a presence of Asians that are known to be Chinese in the Southwest during that time? And maybe talk to us about, is this African writing to you, even though it's known to be Asian writing? You know what I'm saying? Because what I'm hearing,
Saharan script.
It's what?
It's Saharan. It's a script. It's a script that came. It's a script that Black people in Africa was using. For over 2,000 years. It's the Proto-Saharan script. That's not Chinese. It's not because the Chinese writing, that you see today is not the original Chinese writing. The Chinese writing in the past is in a sense, writing like those symbols, some of those symbols, a lot of those symbols, that's not the original symbols. Those are symbols, those are more modern symbols, that they've reinvented. You see, they use what was called a Proto-Saharan script.
Okay, I'm compelled to read this bit right here after you said that.
Go ahead.
It says, okay, this is Chinese. It says Russ Scamp, which is the expert that did the research, the 25 years of research. Russ Scamp gives the following translation to the Albuquerque petroglyphs. Gange, it means a date, the seventh Chinese heavenly stem. Jie, to kneel down in reverence. Da, great, meaning referring to superior. Quan, which is dog, the sacrificial animal. Xian, offering, it means offering worship to deceased ancestors. And then it goes and shows you the actual chart, and it gives you an idea with these words here on the side, on the left. And it talks about modern Chinese, which you see the calligraphy there, the modern writing. Then it talks about the seal era of China. This is still Chinese. And that's from 221 BC to AD 220. And then the Bronze era, this is Chinese writing, 1050 to 221 BC. And then it says oracle bone writing. This is all Chinese writing from 1700 to 1050 BC. Now, the conversation about all language coming from the meta-netter, I can definitely get with that, but that's not the conversation right here. This is actual Chinese writing, and these are Chinese words that were found written in the Southwest of America during 1046 BC. So that's the question. Like, this isn't African, but I just wanted to get you on record to see if you would say it is. This is Chinese writing from Asia.
It's African.
Okay, thank you.
It's African. I've written a whole book on that. I've written a whole book on that. Like it's the Proto-Saharan script. And if you get my book on on ancient writing systems, you see where I discuss that stuff.
Okay.
Those are just in a sense various symbols that have been joined together. Like the so-called oracle bone writing. It's all the same. Just like the first king of. Have you ever read a book called Roots?
Alex Haley
read a book called Roots, or saw Alex Haley book Roots.
Yes.
And remember his ancestors supposed to be called Kunta Kinte. Kunta Kinte. Do you know what the first emperor of China's name was?
What?
Kunta. Kunta.
Right, that's not the argument. I agree that there are African, Dr. Clyde Winters, there are African Chinese links, but those are actually China. The point that I'm making is everything came from Africa. We already know that. Even the language, the writing came from Kemet. But we're talking about in 1046, these people were established as Chinese people. They were Chinese, and they were no longer identifying as Kemetic.
They were not Chinese. They called themselves Kunta. They called themselves Kunta.
Well, my point is, do you agree that they have a distinct culture that is different now, even in 1046? Would you agree that 1046 BC? Would you agree that they had a distinct culture that was different from what we know today as African culture?
No.
Okay. I mean, I should say Kemetic culture, not just African. I should say specifically Kemetic culture. Would you say in 1046 BC, those people who identified themselves, who we know as Chinese, would you say that they had a distinct culture and a distinct writing different from the Kemetic people during that time?
They had in a sense they had a distinct writing. They were not comedians. They were not comedians.
Okay.
I never said they were comedians, but they were people that came from Africa. But they used the writing. They belonged to the Kunta clan. Just like the earliest Elamite kings belonged to the Kunta clan. See, they were the Kunta. And you may have heard in a sense when they talked about Kunta Kinte. And that was supposed to be the ancestor over here. The first ruler of China was called Kunta. The first one of the leading Elamite clan was also of the Kunta clan. So yes, I wrote a book on ancient writing systems. I discuss all that stuff,
Right. And I want to say for the record, there's the Kunlun. I talk about that there is an African presence. A lot of people know there's an African presence in ancient China. However, the fact that you're saying you came and said there was no Chinese presence and that the people from over the Bering Strait had nothing to do with the Chinese and nothing to do with the Siberian, that they were all what we know as Negro. Your claim is that they're all Negro. So I presented proof that there's people who we wouldn't consider Negro today, people who we would not consider Negro. We're not talking about out of Africa. We're not talking about the origins of people. We're talking about your claim that no one in the Americas is Chinese or Siberian, that they're all Negro. Right? You're saying we're all Negro and there was no other Native American origin besides Negro, and there's proof otherwise.
You're getting things mixed up. When I'm talking about Native Americans, I'm talking about red people. When I'm talking about the Aboriginal people, I'm talking about those black people who were the original Paleo Americans. You see, we don't see red Indians in the archaeological category until about 6,000 BC. That's when we begin to see the so-called phenotypical so-called red Indian. Prior to that, everybody was a Negroid, a Negro.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
And then the writing systems, I call that writing the Proto-Saharan script, and the Proto-Saharan script was the writing system that these people used, because you can see in a sense that it was the same flow. The cultures were the same. It's just like, Wandu. Just like the first king of China, as I told you, his name was Kunta. Then we have Kunta Kinte. Then we had the first kings in the Lamai belong to the Kunta clan. So a lot of them are related. A lot of the languages are related. The thing is that's why, in a sense, you see the same symbols that were used in Africa. They were also used by the so-called oracle bone people, the people who wrote on oracle bones. You see, same writing system. Because it was kind of the same people. They all belonged to the same clan. Then later, in a sense, you don't see the so-called contemporary Chinese people are called the Hua. You do not see the Hua people begin to really move into China, until much later. And they say they came from the Tian Mountains. See? So they migrated down from the mountains. That's why a lot of times when people say we're all related, everybody came from Africa, that's all bullshit. I believe that just like God's created different birds, God created different peoples.
So they all have, so the straight hair didn't come from the Caucasian, right? It came, you agree that in those cold climates, that if you say they're African, can you at least acquiesce to say that that phenotypically
I didn't say they were all Africans, because the Australians have straight hair.
No, okay, let me rephrase it. If you say they're all Negro, the people who came from Siberia, they didn't have afros and dark skin, or did they?
When, you got to say when.
Okay, let's see, 20,000 years. 20,000 years ago. 20,000 years ago.
They would have been Negro.
So they did have phenotypical.
Because remember.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Because you remember the white people or the so-called people we call the yellow people, the Chinese, they tell you where they came from. They said they came from the Tian Shan Mountains. You see, the first Asiatic people were in a sense were the Filipinos. Those are the oldest skeletal remains. The taller Chinese Mongoloid people, they come 600 years later. See, I'm going off the archaeological evidence. What people in a sense have found in their diggings, and after they excavate a site, and then the skeletal remains. That's what I'm going on.
And but I do remember you saying that the reason they have this, we're going back to phenotype. When I first talked to you, you said it's because they mixed with the white people, but they came from Siberia. Huh?
Who mixed with the white? I said
we were talking about the natives. I asked you about how they look.
Yeah, we're talking about the Mongoloid and the Red Indians here mixed with the white people. They were the mulattoes. I did not talk about Asia, that they came from Asia. Most of the so-called Red Indians, they came up from Mexico. They migrated into the Americas. Then they went straight down through California into Mexico, and they remained in Mexico for hundreds of years. Then later they migrated out of Mexico, and then they slowly migrated from the Southwest to the East Coast.
But when they came from the Inuit people, talking about the Bering Strait, which you said that's true. When they came from Asia over the Bering Strait, through Siberia over the Bering Strait, did they have afros and dark skin?
At what time?
20,000 years ago.
Yeah, they would have afro. Someone would have had, in a sense, straight hair. Someone would have had kinky hair.
So they.
When they first described the Eskimos, and Eskimos used to be very dark skinned. They're not dark skinned today, but they used to be.
Oh, did you hear? Okay, so you heard me. So I'm just trying to get, because this is the issue. Not even.
We gotta close out now.
No, I know, and I just want to make it clear. I respect your research. Obviously, I respect you as an elder. There is just a big issue with people in our community saying, I believe that there are people who are Native American, but what they're doing is saying none of these people who are phenotypically light skin, straight hair, none of them are Native Americans. So that is something that, go ahead.
You can't say that, because as I said, it's very complicated. Because remember that they never classed. They really never classified Red Indian. They said they were Mongoloid, but they never really looked as Mongoloid. It's very interesting, because see, you got to, when you go back into the mix and you go back into the skeletal remains, and when I'm talking about ancient people, I'm trying to use, the skeletal remains that these archaeologists have found through excavation, and then the phenotypical features of these people that they found in those graves and stuff like that. You see.
All right. Go ahead. What you say, Nepal?
I said, thank you very much for letting me ask you those questions. And someone said, how do you respect his research if you never read his books? Because he's an elder who has been putting in work for decades. And that's why I learned something. So I do respect his research. And I appreciate that he can allow us to come up and challenge his information.
Not scared of questions.
Yes, I love it. So thank you. I do absolutely respect your work. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Clyde. I would like for you to go ahead and use this opportunity to close this show out right quick. We've been up here for 2 hours.
Okay. Well, the whole idea, in a sense, that the foundation of Black America is a native to America is a very complicated issue. And it's complicated because the fact, in a sense, is that people in North America have never been isolated from other parts of the world. Because they haven't been isolated from other parts of the world, people have always been coming here. But I think that there's some issues that need further discussion, further elaboration, and the fact remains. The fact remains, and this is the craziest thing about the history of North America, is that when those Spanish explorers came over here, they had Moorish interpreters, and these Moorish interpreters spoke Hebrew and Arabic, and they said they were able to talk to the Indians. So that meant, in a sense, that many Indians spoke Arabic and Hebrew, but that doesn't mean in the sense that they were Muslims or that they were ancient Jews. It's a complicated issue, but it's something that I hope that we can elaborate on in the future. But you have to be respectful of history and what history tells us. And what history tells us is that there's no complete answers to anything.
All right, Elder Yara, be good, man. Be good. I see you in the I see you in the chat. New Torah Movement. Shout out the New Torah Movement. Be good. Be good. All right. Thank you, Dr. Clyde. See you later. Peace and blessings to you. And we are out of here.